Welcome to the Startup Grind.
But Startup Grind is a global startup community. We're based out of Mountain View, California. We're only 5 years old, and we are currently in more than 170 cities and more than 67 countries. And basically, we're here to help entrepreneurs. And we do that through these monthly events here that are taking place all over the world. So we host monthly interviews. We're starting to do some new things this year where some of the chapters are having parties, so you may see things besides actual interview events. You may see some parties that pop up. We have our annual event, which takes place in Mountain View every year. And that's awesome because it's folks from all over the globe. I think we had about 1,500 people that came this year, just really coming because we are here to educate, inspire, and connect entrepreneurs. So I'm just excited. I've been doing this for, I guess it's about 18 months now, and we're beginning to gain some momentum. So I invite you to come on back. You can pick up a card on your way out, and that if you go to the website, it'll let you know both the events the interviews that we've already done, and so you can actually view those because they go up on the global YouTube channel, and also let you know what is on the pike. I'm excited about our guest tonight, not just because I know him personally, as I know some of you do as well, but there's a lot of talk we hear, entrepreneurs, we hear a lot of talk about millennials and what's going on with the millennial environment. So what really, the differences between traditional and the millennial. So I'm excited that we have Jacques Bastien, who is going to share with us. He's got a unique story in that a lot of entrepreneurs are employees before they become an entrepreneur. But Jacques really hit the ground running, rocking and rolling, even while he was still in college. So he's got a very unique story. He and Daisha are very dear to my heart. We belong to the same church family as well. So we have a tradition in Startup Grind. We think that everyone should have at least one standing ovation in life. And we don't do it at the end. We like to do it at the beginning. So I'd invite all of you to rest on your feet and help me to give a standing ovation to Jacques Bastien. Have a seat. So Jacques and I both can be soft speakers sometimes, so we'll have to keep ourselves, make sure if you guys can't hear us, then please, by all means, let us know. Yes. So like I said, I'm just really excited. I'm always excited. Most of you who've been here to Startup Grind more than once know that I love what I do. I love people, and I love to hear about their stories. I love to kind of hear how they kind of got from there to here. And Jacques has a particularly interesting story. One of the things I really love about Startup Grind is sometimes people that are successful, almost you're moving so quickly, you're moving with velocity, there's a lot of forward momentum, that sometimes you almost need to take a step back and observe. It can be easy to just focus on the future. And sometimes you need to kind of just say, hey, that was really awesome. We don't realize sometimes the influence and the impact that we have on other people. So this is great because you guys have accomplished a lot. So I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about Jacques the person, like where you came from, what started you, talk about your childhood. Who were your folks that motivated you?
Sure. Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay. I was born in Haiti. I came to this country in September 2000. And as you can hear, I'm still learning the language. I kind of typical kid, very curious. My mother was the entrepreneur of the family. She owned different companies, some not even the legalist, but she owned a lot of companies. And I know just from a young age, I've just always, if my parents taught me anything, it's always been just working hard, right? So I came here, and I was an older brother to my siblings. That was my number one priority, and I also think that had a lot to do with kind of the person I became and some of the ways that I interact with people, nowadays. But just I think majority of this kind of started really in high school when I was searching for who I was. Being a curious person, searching for who you are, it kind of put me in a position where I started looking at a lot of different things. I got into arts. I got into a lot of things that shaped themselves to becoming what Boogie is today. But that's essentially what the story is like.
With.
Yeah.
So you came to this country when you were very young,
Yes.
And language was an issue, which you do fine, by the way. Don't when you say that, I'm like, what are you talking about? So you were able to, one of the things about being an entrepreneur, and one of the things that I hear as I begin to talk to different entrepreneurs, in different, it's industry agnostic. It doesn't matter. Part of it is there are things that you overcome. People can encounter similar situations, and it's really how you handle. It's not the situation, but really how you handle the situation. So at a very young age, for whatever reason, you learn to adapt and to change. I'm an Army brat, so I know what it's like to be in a different environment and where things don't look the same. They're kind of fluid. So you started really your entrepreneurial journey you had that as an example from your family. But high school is where you began to see, if entrepreneurship is about seeing a need and meeting that need, talk about some of those needs that you saw that you were able to turn into opportunities for yourself.
Sure. I don't share this story often, but I lost my mother in 2004. So my way of coping with that was I just went into poetry, and I started writing a lot of poetry to just express myself and things like that. And that also started kind of the relationship I had with my younger siblings. But through poetry, I sort of went and started writing music for some of the poems and turned them into songs. I actually have a mixtape I made a long time ago. But and some of the people from the office are here today, and they know that every new hire has to listen to that mixtape, or at least. Oh, if
I'd known that, I would have had Daisha bring it. They're like, run that tape.
But so through the whole process of learning, and I've just from a young age, I've always enjoyed just learning. So I took the music. I realized that music wasn't for me, but in the process, I learned to make beats and instrumentals. And there was a lot of rappers, right, in my school. So at the time, and we're talking about 7th, 8th grade, I took some of those beats that I had made for myself, and I went to some of those rappers and started asking them, hey, I just getting to learn the industry. And before you knew it, I was charging $20, $30, $50 for beats, that I was selling just earlier on. And at a point, I always share this. Before I turned 18, I was a music producer in a way. I drove a taxi cab. I was a computer technician, and a lot of those things just came out of curiosity, right? But it's this idea that I was never too young to do anything, and I know that that's something that was in me from just from a younger age. But so through the process of that whole music, right? And I mean, I think at a point I was selling candy or something like that in school. I was just doing so many things. But what happened is, it's when I got to college, when I came to Albany, I from my old days, I always valued kind of just your physical appearance. So I was the kind of guy who got my hair cut about once every week or every 2 weeks. So when I came to Albany, as a freshman, I didn't know the area much. I figured I felt like there weren't many barbers who actually knew how to cut my hair. At the time I had like low haircut, it was waves, low circuit things. So this thing came afterwards. So when I saw that, I went to YouTube and Google. I ordered clippers. The intent was to cut my own hair. I have some marks on my arm of me sharpening the blades. And around that time, by the time about 2 months into school, that's when my first real company was born, which is Boogie's Cuts. And Boogie's Cuts, some of my college colleagues would know, on an average week, I was cutting maybe 20 to 30 different hairs in my dorm room.
20, 30 different hairs or heads? No, I'm just
heads.
Sorry, you know to expect this from me.
Yeah, no, it's good. But yeah, so I was cutting, and so that's kind of how it started, right? So I was cutting, and I was making a lot of connection and meeting a lot of people with different stories. And through my I want to say my style preferences, I met a few friends of mine who had this idea to start a group called Style is Key, right? So we had this group of just guys who swore to always dress up everywhere we go. From playing basketball to the gym, we would just always be dressed up, right? So through that group, we were offered, and I'm going to speed this story, but we were offered opportunities to host some events around the area. And through that is when I got into starting to host some parties, for the college community. And while I was kind of hosting some of these parties, every time, at the end of the day, once kind of we have to count our profits, we saw a big chunk of the money was going to flyer design. So not knowing any better, I kind of, we were spending about $100 or so. And I went to YouTube and Google and just started looking into how you design flyers. I somehow got a copy of Photoshop, and I just started experimenting. And essentially, that's really how Boogie Graphics, which we all know now as Boogie, was born. I started designing flyers for promotional flyers and stuff for our events that led to designing promotional flyers for our competitors. So on an average weekend, I would be cutting the hair of somebody who's going to a party that I designed a flyer for. And so while I was at those parties, I got a camera, and essentially I was cutting the hair of somebody who's going to a party that I was hosting, that I designed a flyer for. And then I would take pictures at that party to show them, the experience afterwards. And that's kind of how a lot of things have been for me, right? So that led to starting almost a photography company and a bunch of stuff that came after it. So I'm big on taking finding need and essentially creating that solution.
Which is the heart of a couple of things I heard. So it's not just about finding an opportunity. A lot of businesses or opportunities are caused because it makes me crazy that I can't find this or do this or have this. So it's seeing the opportunity. But it's a lot of people, it's just an idea. It's an annoyance, it's a frustration. But you actually put that into motion, and you were able to do something else that's really important that successful entrepreneurs do, and that's pivot. So you talked about that even before you really had a business per se. But and we'll come back to that ability of knowing when it's time to change and when it's time to pivot. Because if we look at the fact that a lot of startup companies don't last, over 5 years they're dead and gone, then we know that somewhere there's a disconnect that takes place. And part of that is if the enthusiasm or the passion wanes, not really getting the proper intel, which you're a researcher, that's something that I don't know how to do this and I'm curious, and so you made that happen. So all of these things are really kind of success indicators of what makes a successful business. So we're moving up. Boogie is birthed in your dorm room. You have created a monopoly on the whole party dance scene because you are the dude that, you are the man that everyone goes to look sharp, to be at the right party, have their flyers done, get their pictures taken while they're there. So each of those really kind of evolved into kind of sub-businesses for you. So now you have Boogie, and you're in school. You've got these different enterprises, these little micro businesses that you've got going on. And at some point, a decision came where you were like, okay, I can continue to do this from a home-based business, right? Or I can now make it more of a traditional business in that it's going to have an outside address.
Right.
So what were some of those thoughts? So you've got an office here, and I know that you're going to be moving. But talk about the thought process that kind of went into place. Where you're like, okay, it's time to shift from home to an outside address?
Yeah, so in 2010, I made a decision to basically remove some of the things that I was doing. So I looked at all the different companies, and ironically, they were the whole
your
thing
monopoly,
was
you're talking
right.
Sorry, go ahead.
It was called Boogie Productions, right? And under Boogie Productions was Boogie Records, it was Boogie Clips, Boogie Graphics, and Boogie's Cuts. There was a website that had all of these things in it, and that's kind of how you get started. So I had sort of a sit down with myself, and I was looking at, out of all of these things, which can actually be a real career for me. And I realized, I decided that Boogie Graphics was the one. And through Boogie Graphics, there are other things we can also do, photography, videos, that kind of thing. So I decided at that moment that I was going to spend most of my time building that company. So that was my junior year. So through that, I started looking into kind of what was needed for that company, and I kind of got out of the party business and started working with small businesses. Through working with small businesses, I saw that they needed printing. So once I made their business card, they also needed printing. So I started looking into some printing partners to work with. And through the same process, they also wanted websites. And majority of the time, it was just like, hey, can you make us a website? I said, yeah, sure. And I would just go home. On one computer, I'm learning how to do it. On the other computer, I'm actually doing it. So that was kind of how things were. After I graduated in 2012, I had, a decision to make. Either I put my all into this thing, right, and make it into what is becoming today, or kind of go back home to Brooklyn and essentially start from scratch. The thought process was that I was still just a kid. I look like a kid, still look like a kid, and it was difficult to have meetings with other companies and let them know why they should spend $50,000 on us or anything like that. So the assumption is that by getting an office space, it would allow us to look just as big as the other companies that they're using, except we're a lot cheaper, so it made sense. But the ironic thing about the office is that we, at least for me, when I was in college, the company was able to take care of my finances, that kind of thing, but not enough to make an actual living. So when I decided to get an office, I looked at a few options, and we saw a nice office, which is where we are today. We saw a nice office, and at the time, definitely could not afford it. I could not afford any offices. And I'll just fast forward the story. So after a few conversations with some friends and close people that I trust, my best friend and my wife, and I decided to just take the chance and get this office space. When I signed the lease for that space and I gave all the deposits and things like that, I had about $250 left to my bank account. And I always say it's not $250 with rich parents, right? It's not $250 with a rich aunt or a rich uncle or anything like that. It's not $250 with an investor. It's the same. It's $250. Meaning once 50 is gone, it's 200 left. And at the time, my personal expenses were that office as well as my home and my car. But I basically told myself, I'm just going to make sure I pay this thing. And this happened actually this month, 3 years ago. And, 3 years later, I'm sitting here in front of you guys and, we have not been late on any rent. We don't owe anybody any money. And it just happened.
It just happened. I'm going to stop you right there. I'm like, what are you talking about? You covered so much in that this is again where we talk about you've achieved so much success and you're like, oh yeah, and that was just in 3 years. And I'm like, okay, so we have a business that we've started while we're still in school full time. I'm assuming. Yep. Okay, full time school student. We start not just one business but several businesses that are running very successfully, a monopoly, and then we have the wherewithal to decide, okay, some of these things are not working. I need to create and focus on all of these decisions that you're making are really decisions that business owners are making each and every day, and we've got a range of folks here in the audience, whether they're students, they're wannabe-preneurs, folks that, I kind of have an idea, but I don't, haven't really started it yet. Folks who have started a business and really are not sure what to do next. Folks that have mature businesses, and maybe they want to scale on a national level or on a global level. And you fast forwarded through, these really, these are the steps that contribute to your success, right? These are the steps, not just your success, but, let's just go back a little bit. And Daisha, I'm not going to let him leave you out of this story, okay? So when we talk about balance, we're talking about a student and a business owner. You created a following, not just in customers, right? Because when we look at customers are internal before they're ever external. So you were gathering almost this groundswell of support and following. You had good advisors. All these are things that companies need to have in place and to be able to utilize. And you were also blessed to find someone who could partner with you, not just starting off as a business partner, but something so awesome. So I am not going to let you off the stage without talking about the blessing of Daisha. Yay! Give it up. Yeah. So you're in school. You have this friend. You guys begin working together, and if you better. Okay. So you're friends. You begin working together and supporting each other. And tell the story, man. What happened?
So we
And if he doesn't tell it right, Daisha, I'm gonna.
So we met my sophomore year and her freshman year. I think it was the waves that she was attracted to. But we met and we were just friends, and we kind of grew as that. The biggest thing that attracted us was, at least on my side, was she was a phenomenal writer. She's just always been, and things that would take me hours to put together take her 5 minutes. And being the person who, at the time, right, my grammar wasn't the best. I always kind of reach out to her if I needed an about us page written or something for a client. And anytime I try to offer to pay her, she was like, this is just kind of a friendly gesture. We kind of grew, we grew from college, and little by little we started dating. And she was, a huge part of the company being itself. Whether it's, the days that I'm juggling, classes, right, and work. A lot of times I have to make decisions of, do I take this midterm or do I get this project done? So, and I know for me, just back to the whole hard work thing, once I get into the zone, I can sit in front of a computer for 20 hours and just keep working. And I know that, it wasn't, if it was not for her, who would bring me food, right, to my room and force me to eat. And I was like a zombie, essentially. I was up at 5 a.m. I would work the whole day. I would go to class like in the afternoon or the nighttime, and I'd go back to my desk and work again. So when I graduated, I'm just gonna try to fast forward the story. When I graduated, she had another semester left, and Daisha and also my friend Julius over there, they were the people who were with me. A lot of people were with me, but mostly them two. When I had to decide to get the office, and when I decided to move forward with it, I was panicking, right? Because I looked at prices for construction, it was just outrageous, So, and being, I don't know what I could afford with $250, right? So, but Julius convinced me, like, man, we could do this. And we went to YouTube and Google, right, and Home Depot, and we essentially, for the next 4 months, myself, Julius, and Daisha essentially built the office, from building walls to putting carpet down to painting to going to IKEA to get desks and chairs to put in. But that's the story of how the office happened, right? But I know that a lot of this would not be possible without Daisha. She eventually joined the company full time, and since then it has been nonstop hustling, from the both of us. And it's awesome to just have somebody to go back to, and for us, we spend about 24 hours together in a day, and it's probably the best thing. That's probably the thing I wake up every day excited about. The interesting thing is, last year, so I started teaching at U Albany in 2013, and 2014, and while I was in one of my classes, this was Valentine's Day week, there was this article call out essentially for any entrepreneur who wants to attribute their success to their significant other. So I was like, I can reply to this. I'll say something good about Daisha. And, I said I'd probably take 10 minutes to write a few things here and there. They wanted about 100 words. So I was midway through class, and I started typing just some of the stuff that I wanted to say to her. And about an hour and a half to 2 hours later, I was still typing. The students left and new class started coming in. I was still there typing. And it was that day, this was February, and Valentine's Day was that Friday. I'm sorry, this was Tuesday, Valentine's Day was that Friday. That was the day that I decided that this was the time that I proposed to her. And so, fast forward the story, I sent the piece out. It was included on Inc. magazine. So the proposal kind of went, it was on their website. And I wasn't satisfied with it, so I started doing a few more things. I started singing to her. let's get married, and recording it and recording her reaction to telling me to shut up. And we have at our house, we have this TV, this slideshow picture thing. I hid a few "Will you marry me" notes in there, but hid it a way that it could still be hidden. And what happened is that on Valentine's Day, now we're working together, we had a potential client that was a jewelry store. And I've been planning this whole thing. So we went there, and when she got there, I said, "I'll go in first. I'll go to this meeting." And she came in afterwards, and the clerk, she said, "Hey, excuse me, can I do a survey? We're doing surveys trying to see which rings young people like." So they asked her which one out of the two she liked. And I know those were the two that she would like the most. I knew the one she would like, but I was like, just to be safe. So the one she picked, and the woman looked at her and said, "Oh, you look very familiar. What's your name?" She said, "Daisha." And the woman said, "Oh, I read about a Daisha this morning. Here." And what she showed her was a website that I made called Dear Daisha, which had the whole 2 hours worth of writing in there, just a message to her directly. And while she was reading, I basically came around the back and came and did the proposal. A few weeks later, friends and family started asking us, how did it happen, this whole story, but the longer version. So using skills that I learned back in the day, back before high school, I put together a quick video, 5 minutes long, just explaining the whole thing. And we put the video online, and basically about a day or so later, it was like 40,000 views on YouTube. And it just kept on growing after that. And it was featured on the Huffington Post and a bunch of other publications. And we were eventually contacted by Fox News in New York City, who said they loved our story so much that they wanted to marry us, pay for it, and feature the whole story like on a TV show or something like that, which happened about a month after the wedding. And throughout the whole process, a bunch of sponsorship opportunities came, including a $25,000 wedding gown by Gali La Havre, and just a bunch of things. I mean, I think.
Wait, just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop. You are such a guy. Okay, so there are so many. I'll do the business part first before I just start running around this room. The concept of, so often we'll read, if you're passionate and you are really enthusiastic about something, and that's where your heart is, and you move on that thing, then it's not work, right? It evolves into this thing that, it's not even your job anymore. And so you were able to literally, and I'm, no pun intended, marry in the course of just your writing, and so suddenly you realize that you've got to make this move. It's Tuesday, and I have to make this proposal by Friday. We will talk about that later. But you had to fast track this thing. You had to make it happen, but you had the skill set to be able to put it. And that, again, comes right back to the entrepreneurial DNA. This is what I'm talking about, where you are able to go from idea to execution and having the resources and the skills to be able to go from idea to execution that not only met a personal need, a very, emergent and urgent, like it was like, okay, things can't continue the way that you turned it into it became a business related by you answering kind of an off-cuff article, you responded, and it gained momentum and it got so much traction that now this is something that generates the rewards. Mm-hmm. So you've got the viral coverage. You are being known as a writer. You that are not a writer, right? You're the one that's not the writer. But yet, obviously, you're a writer well enough that Huffington Post and, Forbes, those are like publications that one or two people probably have read and may know about. You began to get this thing, so it met that need. But it also generated this business, and you are now known as someone can point to you as being someone that can create. If he was able to do this for himself, and it wasn't even something that was a planned marketing campaign. This was an act of love that turned into a very valid business proposition. Yep. And so talk about how that, really that whole process, I'm not even sure exactly how to articulate that. This is everything that you've talked about tonight. really speaks to that sort of a thing where you're like, oh, I just thought about it and I thought I was going to. But there is something that's taken place that you're doing, that you're putting into play repeatedly and successfully, that you just keep moving that. That's given you the ability to, you don't just have Boogie now. Again, you've done some pivoting.
Right.
And so you don't just have your location. Talk about a little bit about when do you know, when is something you kind of know that it's a solid thing that is going to translate into kind of pushing the business forward, whether that's location. You even talked about making some changes, not just locally, but exploring some options for expanding the company.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that.
Our whole journey at Boogie has just been a big list of pivots. We started out as a graphic design freelancer, right? Mm-hmm. And became a graphic design and printing company, and then graphic design and web, and then in graphic design, printing, and marketing. And once you get to some of those, we start removing some things. So
sure.
At the time, graphic design was dropped, even though it was within it. Then we just became a marketing company, mm-hmm. and through the process, we became a marketing company. Then we became a social media company. Mm-hmm. Then, as of this year, we became a millennial marketing company, mm-hmm. which specializes in social media. But a lot of it is just through figuring out. It's like we're doing things. So it's two things. One, it's we're doing things. This is working. This is not working. Mm-hmm. Let's invest more time and energy on this one that is working. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is the world is changing, and as the world changes, we see there's a greater opportunity here than there. We just at the company in general, we enjoy being ourselves. We enjoy being humans. We enjoy a lot of things that a lot of more traditional companies may not find quote unquote professional.
So it's your culture.
Right.
So really, and we've heard this from a few, even David Dussault, who we had last month, but it really is about creating a culture. And the culture in a company, successful companies, are based on the founders' values, and I want you to talk a bit about your values in a moment. But it is also finding like-minded people is what I think I hear you saying, and then coalescing that into a team that is able to. Everyone knows their expertise. You've got several members of your team that are here, and each one knows their kind of special forces for that piece that they do exceptionally well. And it sounds like that has helped you to create a culture that works for Boogie. But it also sounds like that's also how you are interacting with your clients as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I guess on the team topic, I tell them at a meeting early this week, I tell them that it sucks that I get all this credit because I don't deserve any of this, right? Because it's a lot of them, and we talk about how at the company a lot of us are hustlers and entrepreneurs at heart. And
what's that term you use?
Hustlepreneurs. So a lot of us are hustlepreneurs at heart, and that's really the way to survive, not only at our company but at sort of a new age company like ours. Things are changing every day, and deadlines are approaching, and we, with limited days that we are at the office, we have to be hustlers to make sure we kind of get some of the stuff we need to get done. Mm-hmm. So I'm very grateful to the team, and it's about 10 of us now, and it's turning to a beautiful thing, right? Because I think the biggest difference for me and say some of the other entrepreneurs that may have sat on this seat is that we're still undergoing the process. We're still learning, and we're still switching. We're not quote unquote there yet. We've had a lot of successes, but we also have a lot of places we're headed. So, and the biggest, and I know you mentioned culture and values. Transparency has been the biggest thing for us, mm-hmm. For our team as well as our clients. Mm-hmm. Because our whole idea is we're really trying to build that ideal job that we would want to work at. So that goes for why we only have a 4-day work week and we don't work on Wednesdays. That goes for why it's almost like we're very human with our clients. We open the conversation about your kids and your ex-wives, and mm-hmm. we're human beings.
Sure.
It's like it's almost not worth it anymore when you have to act or be fake at work.
Operating under a facade.
Right.
Talk about, share the Boogie values.
Sure. The values are design, which is us learning that we're always going to be design driven, in our appearance, in our work, in the quality we put out. The second one is transparency, just because it's not worth keeping it in.
Sure.
So everybody at the company, from intern level to, the highest level that can be, from day one knows our financials if they want to. They know where we're headed. They have access to all that stuff. And the same thing for our clients when we kind of get them on board. They know when we're working on our projects. We bring them into the project management systems we use. So it eliminates things like, hey, when are you going to work on this? When is everything is just
Sure.
right in the open. I said the values. I said transparency and design.
Transparency.
The third one is human, because human.
As opposed to alien.
Right. Because we welcome each other to be ourselves. It almost is not worth it if you're unable to be yourself.
Right.
The same thing goes with our clients. We almost hold our clients by the same values that
Sure.
we hold ourselves on, and we pick the clients we work with
Right.
based on those same exact values. And the last one is growth, because we swear that we'll always try to be better than we were yesterday. And that's
Say that again.
we swear that we'll always try to be better than we were yesterday.
We'll always try to be better than we were yesterday. Okay.
And through growth, we welcome change. We're always going after the next thing, but we also take change with an open arm. We take mistakes because we use those as an opportunity to grow and learn from. So, and through the same growth, we study a lot, we read a lot, we go to conferences, it's like the culture at the company, it's the people who just loves learning and feeding themselves. Those are the kind of people we attract.
And those are so those are folks that you attract as a team, and those are folks. One of the awesome things about being an entrepreneur is that you are able to choose who you like to work with, and that's what I love about Startup Grind is because I did broadcasts for the legislature, and I didn't have a choice. I had to talk to who they said I had to talk to, and I had to talk about what they wanted me to talk about. But Startup Grind gives me the liberty to choose interesting people with interesting stories. And get them to share it in interesting ways. So let's talk a little bit about another outgrowth, which I think it sounds like is a result of your culture, your values, your relationship with each other, and really with the community. I've seen some things about your community engagement and philanthropy. So talk about how Boogie does community engagement.
Sure. And this goes back to our just human values. We just attract people who care, right? And there's a lot of things that we all care about at the office, and it works so much better that we all care about different things, because then through that all as a team, we just care about a lot of things. And we had have a community initiative we actually started a few months ago called Boogie Cares. And that initiative is every year we pick 2 not-for-profit organizations with very compelling messages or compelling things that they do, and we just we go into their offices and basically offer our services to them for free for 6 months. And the hope is that whatever they're doing, whether it's touching lives or whatever it is, we want to help them broaden that message. We want to help them through the services that we offer. If they need a video to go viral or whatever it is, we want to use some of those services that we've spent time learning to help them basically broaden their message.
Again, relating to the community impact, all of the things that Boogie has done came to the attention of Upstate Venture Connect. And we had Martin Babinick as a guest a few months ago. And you, as part of what they do, which is really trying to we've got a lot that's going on in New York State, upstate especially, in terms of entrepreneurship and tech and growth and outreach, and unfortunately a lot of it is siloed. It's regional, and Upstate Venture Connect has really worked hard to kind of connect I like to think of it as pearls, a necklace of pearls, and so they're moving and they're making sure that those are connecting and are working very effectively. And one of those things that they do is UVC connectors. And you are one of those connectors. And again, I think, like I said, that speaks to the community engagement. So talk a little bit about that. What difference has that made from, Jacques College Dorm, starting Boogie, and now you are a part of an organization that is making an impact across New York State?
It's very close to the person I am, because I used to deny this for the longest, but I've accepted the fact that I talk a lot. I love talking, and it's difficult for me to stop. I have a lot of things to say, and I have opinions on things. So, I think nowadays, kind of where I am right now, and as we've talked about, I think my life, where it's headed to a position of teaching. I fell in love with teaching, and it doesn't have to necessarily be the traditional sense of teaching. I teach a course at UAlbany, a design course, but I also teach through some of the writings, and I teach through some of the public speaking that I do. And I think with UVC, it just gave me another opportunity to just do some more teaching. I have a blog that I started called Hustlepreneur.co, and the reason I started that blog is it goes with the same reason why I'm a part of UVC. It's that I spent all these years learning all these things that I was only going to use once. From when you're unable to afford a lawyer, you become a lawyer. When you can't afford construction crew, you become a construction worker. And the whole thing, painters and etc. So a lot of those things that I've learned, not construction, but a lot of those things that I've learned over the years, there are a lot of startups out there and small businesses that could benefit from them, and they're just sitting in my head.
Sure.
So I enjoy talking. I enjoy just sharing. Back to the whole transparency thing. It's useless in my mind, So UVC gives me the platform essentially to have these great conversations and meet people and share things and learn stories. And very similar to you, I love hearing about other people's stories. I'm a big story person. I'm not a writer. I'm a storyteller. When I write, there has to be a story in it.
Sure.
If I try to write something collegiate, it doesn't sound right. So, and some people from the team are laughing because I've tried that.
Sure.
But no, so it just goes down to some of the things that I'm passionate about, and and especially young people. I love just watching young people start things.
Sure.
That's like one of the big. It's the perfect time. There's nothing stopping you.
Right.
So for me, through UVC and some of the other things I'm involved in, it's allowed me to almost be a mentor to a lot of people. And the difference between me, the thing about me being a mentor is that I can use mentoring myself. I'm still in the process, as I mentioned before, and we're not quote unquote there yet. But being that one of our values is growth, we will never be there, right? So we'll just keep trying to be better than we were yesterday. So I'm learning, and as I learn, I will teach, and then I will just keep learning, keep teaching.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. You have taken a lot of you and Boogie as a company. I'm hesitating because there's two questions I want to ask, and I'm hoping to be able to get them both in. But what kind of I'll go with what trends are you seeing? And that can be either in your industry. Have you noticed some trends through your work with Upstate Venture Connect? Some things locally that have caused you to, either you're influencing them yourself, or you see some things and that's causing you to move the company in a different direction?
Sure. So I'll speak on both. So locally, there's a lot of change that I'm seeing. When I was deciding whether or not I stayed here, and I'm very happy I made that decision to stay in this area, because a lot of entrepreneurs, talented ones, end up leaving this area because there are not enough opportunities. And the way I looked at it is I would just kind of make those opportunities, right? So, but things have changed a lot from 3 years ago. The support system that I think I needed that would have allowed me to maybe even move faster, or, even spending my last dime on an office space, I didn't have a mentor. So, I don't know if that was the right decision or not, you know what I'm saying? So I think entrepreneurs, younger entrepreneurs now have access to people like myself and Martin and David and some of the other, entrepreneurs around this area who, through UVC and things like that, they can actually get mentors and they can get the right advices to know what to do. So I know that that's a big change that I'm seeing. And on our end, we're seeing the millennial thing is working amazing for us. It's been working very well.
And you're talking in terms, I know you are obviously, but in terms of your client base,
yes,
the customers that you
in
see?
terms
Okay.
of going after, working with companies and helping them communicate with millennials.
Gotcha.
So through that, we spend our days researching millennial trends, millennial, just everything. The best ways to actually connect with millennials, and we even look into things like what are they doing at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know Boogie in general, there's a slight shift of sort of where we're headed. We're headed to an area of more videos, and that brings up a conversation of a possible acquisition that we have in the works. We are opening an office in LA because that's just another city that's very popular for the millennials. But we also just want to be based where the millennials are.
Sure.
And it works out for us because we can be there and we won't look weird, right? Because if you're a 50-year-old person, I love 50-year-old people. But if you're a 50-year-old person, please.
Suddenly the screen went dark.
Yeah, 28. But if there's a lot of, I've seen a lot of other millennial companies that are ran by 50-year-old
Right.
people, and the millennial in the company are interns, right?
Sure.
So in interns, we may not have the kind of access that
And
our
the
interns have.
perspective. Sure.
So
Absolutely.
then it's really just all out of just thought, and I think that's how young people act. So we can actually go there on the ground and blend in because
Right.
we're
Undercover
millennials.
and stuff.
Yeah.
But what's really cool about what you said is that that is a mistake that a lot of companies make, not just entrepreneurial companies, but companies in general, is that when you operate from the perspective of the offerings, the services, and the products that you are presenting are coming from what you think, and you have not done enough intel, and you haven't done focus groups, and you don't really know what the market is asking for, and then you wonder why you're not getting sales, you're wondering why business isn't working.
Right.
It really has to come from, it's a dialogue, it's a conversation. So it's about, okay, well, this is what I think, and then you bounce that out there, and it's like, no, okay, based on the response that you get. So it is, that's a very cogent point about how to help keep a company sustainable and successful and lively, is to really kind of hear what your market, really defining what that market is. So you absolutely need to know who your customers are and what it is that they want, and respond to that and give them that, not feed them what you would like them to have. The last thing I kind of want to talk about, because I want to leave some time for folks to ask questions, is I've heard a lot of things. I know that faith is important. You've taken some leaps of faith, and then we also have the spiritual faith. So those are both things that, for both of us are super important. And really bringing that balance into play, because you're super busy. Your spouse is a part of your company. You guys are together 24/7, working together in the business and working together outside of the business. You already confessed that you're working even when you're not working. So Daisha has to try and help keep that balance in place. So we talked to David DeSalt last month, and he was kind of like, can you really get that balance? So I'm interested in the perspective that you may have about how do you let your faith be active. How does that show up? Does that show up? And how do you balance that out?
Hey, at the office, we're not like, we don't throw our faces at our team's faces.
Sure.
We don't start and pray in the morning. But, throughout the whole journey, right, it's been God that has done all this.
Sure.
Back to the whole taking credit thing. If I'm being praised by stuff that the team is doing, I'm being praised by stuff that God is doing.
Sure.
I truly believe that God brought Daisha to me. And I truly believe that, everything was meant to happen the way it did. And God is watching the company.
Sure.
Regardless if our team knows it or not, every morning we pray for them. Every morning we pray for our clients.
Right.
And regardless of how things go, regardless of what happens, we know that that's the will that God had. That's kind of how it had to happen.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And what it also adds is that, it's like I have two sources of faith, right? Because
Right.
I have this just entrepreneurial faith where I can say, here's my last money, I have $250 left. And I have that, and that's what majority of other entrepreneurs have. They can take that faith take that leap of faith and make those, take that chance. Then I also have that other side of faith that tells me that God's got it.
Got your
Right?
back.
So it's almost unfair to, if let's say there was like a competition of sorts, it's almost unfair because if that one was to fail me, the entrepreneur one, the God one got me, right? And the God one never fails. So I always have just two sources of faith.
Yeah.
No, so it's definitely been, it's gotten me and Dacia's relationship stronger, and even a lot of the values we have for Boogie, it's all stuff we practice
Sure.
ourselves. We try to be better than we were yesterday, whether it's growth in the sense of mentally, spiritually, or just physically, whether we're headed to the gym and things like that. And
Sure.
I told you about some of the stuff that I have going on. So
Right. Right.
But yeah, so the faith is definitely a very important part of the whole thing.
So it sounds like, you've talked about a lot of things. We covered, I wanted to delve more into process, but what I am realizing even as we are talking tonight is that it's not even necessarily a process that's articulated per se. Like if I were to say, okay, so, what would you, if we wanted a process that we could leave with folks that are listening today and, okay, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a fledgling entrepreneur, and what are, there is no ABC, 1, 2, 3. It really, and I think we heard David and even Martin Babinick talk about that as well. It really is finding your lane, finding your unique value proposition, not just for your business, but you guys have been able to find it in your lives and allow that to percolate and create a culture that makes a place that you really want to work and the people want to be there, and that overflows into your interactions with your relationships with your clients and your customers, and that overflows, and it really is you hear the term inbound marketing and how that's so much more successful. It's better and easier, right, once you establish that thing, to have folks that are and it sounds like that's what's happened. And it's kind of grown into a just created a nice synergy, a nice ecosystem. I kind of cringe when you use that word, but it really has, both within, for your population within, and also for the folks that you have reached out to and that are in turn reaching out to you, kind of helping you create that footprint locally and also regionally in New York. And as you take the company, Boogie's on out to the West Coast, and we're going to see some things taking place there. So I wanted to leave some time for folks to ask questions. Who's got questions? You look like you have a question. No?
I was impressed with you started very early, and your thought struck me that your cultural upbringing in Haiti allowed you to see things differently in this culture when you came here. And I was just curious if that's something you were aware of. Did that actually, called bicultural, did that help you see things that other people didn't see?
Yeah, and I think definitely, and I always leave this part out of the story just because that's not what I want to be known as. Mm-hmm. But I think my mother passing when I was 14 years old had a very big part of it, right? Because I had to grow up a little faster that year than the normal rate that I was growing. So I went from the annoying brother, right, to the older brother. And I've always been the older brother, but when father has to work and mom was home, and I became the kid that stayed home. So I started seeing things differently just from then. And, a big reason why I know that, now that, Dacia's in my life and I have a lot of other really close friends, they're just part of that motivation. But earlier on, it was really just trying to give my siblings a better life than I had. And I would say that it wasn't like I had a bad life. And that's why I keep this part out. There's no regrets. Everything happened for a reason. But for me was, we were in Brooklyn, living in the hood, right? So personally, that's not the lifestyle that I want for my siblings. So I know a lot of reason that I work hard was to be able to give them a different life. So, but what you said is right. I think culturally, just because of just the person I am, that's something I learned from a very young age, to respect everyone and things like that. But the part of me that's like, you're never too young to do anything. I know that's because I wasn't too young back then to be almost like a second dad.
Other questions? Yes.
What was one of your biggest challenges after moving into your new space?
It's a great
Just
question.
running the business.
It's a great question because there are just so many of them. I'm trying to figure out which one to pick.
Or like even an aha that helped you address one of those challenges or that big challenge.
It's a good question. I think the closest thing I could think about, which is a challenge that was every year we were in existence, has been a challenge that kept on coming back. Because a lot of them we were able to solve, whether it's building a team and things like that. I know being a company that did not raise any finances or didn't have any loans from the bank or any rich parents, that kind of thing. And it's okay to be rich parents. I have rich parents. You know, my siblings or my kids are gonna have rich parents.
Very cool.
But you know, because of that, I think our rate of growth was a lot slower than it could have been. You know, so at times maybe there were opportunities we wanted to take, but we couldn't take them because of the financial aspect of it. Whether we needed to hire somebody or bring somebody on board that was going to take us and quadruple our growth, and we weren't able to do that at a younger age, earlier stage. So I know just the finance part was something that held us back. But on the same token, I don't regret it at all, and I would not change things because I think the fact that I'm able to sit here and speak to you guys is probably because of that fact. It just made me work 6 times harder, and I literally mean 6 times harder. You know, if I had the finances, maybe I'd work 2 times harder, and that probably wouldn't have been enough.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm just curious. What was so important? What was the major reason for securing office spaces early on, and how has that benefited you?
I'll answer that and also add how has that thought changed actually. But the main reason was because it was a perception thing. It was I look like I was 10, and I go to these meetings. I sound like I was 10. My voice got a little deeper over the years. This has not come yet though. But so it was just the perception of it, right? Having an office, it just increases the trust factor. They know that if you're late on work, they can come knock on your door. So it was a trust thing, and it has helped us. You know, from getting there, we built the office, and it looked like we hired somebody to do it. So somebody come in, they think we're this really big shot company. But how has that changed a lot is because of kind of the way we work now and some of the softwares we use. A lot of our team work from home. Majority of our New York City team works from home. We have a satellite office in Brooklyn, but it's really small, just because it's not needed. So now that we've had the pleasure of working with a lot of companies, from the NBA on a national level to Event Fitness in Austin on a local level, we don't necessarily. It's okay that we're young and we look like we're 10 because we can just go there and say, well, we work with these people, and that's the trust. That's enough of the trust factor that we need.
Maybe not 10, but
I was like, because 10, I should have gotten like some form signed for permission. Anybody else have any questions? Well, that's actually a good sign because it means that we covered a lot of things that people were interested in. And, we're going to stick around for a while after we wrap up. So I know sometimes it's easier to ask a question not in an open setting, and so there's going to be time for that. But, I just wanted to thank you. It's always neat for me when it's neat and it's a challenge to interview people that I know, because you have to walk that balance between making sure you ask, like, I know certain things, and so other people don't know those things, and so you make sure that you get that information out. Just so you're not forgetting anything. But then I definitely love the fact that I always learn things about, there's probably been 3 or 4 folks that I knew before I interviewed them, Martin and David and you, Rick DeRico, that I, already knew. And so it's always cool for me, sitting in the chair, to be able to learn new things about people that I admire. And I have great esteem for, what you've accomplished, you and Boogie and team and Daisha have accomplished as a company. Also I always have to, again, thank the folks over it. I see Paul back, he's in the booth, but really wouldn't be able to do what we do without the help that we get, and of course my amazing video team, Limitless Imprints. And again, all of you, if you weren't here, I guess we could still do it, but it creates a different dynamic when we have folks in the audience. So thank all of you so much for coming. Next month we are not going to be here. We're actually going to be at the Opalka Gallery, and again, you can get the information about that upcoming event, but we won't be here next month. So just thank you all for coming. I hope that you got some information that was helpful and useful. And we just invite you to come to the next one. So, Jacques, thank you. I think it's a wrap.